Hello, everyone. We had some news today. Ameer Abdullah on the team. Now, Ameer Abdullah, he's a running back, former second round pick of obviously the Detroit Lions, and that was back in 2015. And his numbers, as far as his career go, um, his best year was like at least running the ball was actually his rookie year where he carried it 143 times for 597 yards. Had two touchdowns at a long of 36 and a 4.2 yards per carry. He averaged 37.3 yards a game and 8.9 attempts a game. And he did have five fumbles, which was kind of an issue of him coming out in college. But he's kind of cleaned those up a little bit as he only has eight in his career, had five in his 1 year. So that looks like it can improve. Uh, he did have one this year though, and two in 2017. Now his 2016 year was cut short due to foot surgery pretty early on, so he had 18 carries for 101 yards, but he had 5.6 yards a carry. And for those games the games that he played, it happened in week two. He had 50.5 yards a game, and he was averaging 9 touches a game on the ground. So and 2017 came back, 165 carries, 552 yards, four touchdowns, and 3.3 yards a carry, 39.4 yards a game, 11.8 carries a game, and two fumbles. And then this year, he hasn't really been getting on the field, which is probably why they cut him. And he had one attempt for 1 yard and a long of one. And he does have a fumble this year, but I believe that was on a kick return. And receiving the ball, I think this is more important than the rushing as far as how his role could be used in Minnesota. His first year, he caught 25 of 38 targets for 183 yards and a touchdown, and a catch percentage of 68.8%. A Now once again, 2016 cut short due to injury. And he did catch all five of his targets for 57 yards and a touchdown, which obviously is 100% on the catching rate. And 2017 caught 25 of his 35 targets for 162 yards, 6.5 yards of reception for a touchdown, and 71.4% catch rating. And so far this year, he's 2 for 2, so 100%. He's averaging 9 yards a reception with only 18. He hasn't got a touchdown, but overall, his actual catch percentage comes down to 84.3%, and his yards per reception throughout his career, what he averages is 7.4. And so this is a guy you can utilize out of the backfield, and this is another key spot I think that Minnesota would look at and be like, hey, we can use you there. And that's the return game, which I think we kind of can all admit that we struggle a bit there this year. In 2015, he had 37 returns for 1,077 yards, and he's never scored a touchdown on kick return, but he had a long of 104 back in 2015. He had 29.1 yards a return, and in that year, he had 1,857 total all purpose yards. And in 2017, 8 returns for 179, and a long of 29, 22.4 average, and his all-purpose yardage down to 893. And then you have this year where he only has 4 kick returns for 107 yards, a long of 32, but a 26.8 yards per return average, and only 126 all-purpose yards as of right now to this point. Now, he does average 27.8 yards a return throughout his whole career, which is good. That's actually pretty solid. You can work with that a lot. And based on, like, we did lose Mike Hughes, they've stressed they don't necessarily want Marcus Sherrills doing both kick and punt returns just because he is smaller and they worry about injuries. That has been stressed a few times. And with him coming into the building, you can expect Rock Thomas to likely head to the IR. I do think they like him a lot still. Just it's a very similar player. It's a more talented version of Rock Thomas, if you will. And he's been having this injury thing going on, and I imagine he just goes right to the IR. And As far as Ameer Abdullah goes, though, if he does have a role in this offense, I would expect it to be more of this Gio Bernard, Darren Sproles type, where maybe you throw a swing pass to him and you get the blockers out in front for a screen. You maybe throw him a toss, get him out in space, because he is not a north-south guy. He is small. He's only 5'9", 205 pounds. But what he is he's not necessarily the fastest guy, but he is certainly shifty and explosive in short areas, and he has great lateral agility. And what he can do is make you miss in space. So even though he might not be breaking off any of those 70-yard runs like Dalvin Cook is, he could get you with like a 40, 50-yard gain just because he made the one guy out there miss, and maybe he doesn't outrun the safety. That's kind of what you're looking at with him in terms of what he can bring to the offense. I think you could look at that. And I do think going back to the kick returning, we could see him just day one be the kick returner. Because, like I said, no Mike Hughes. They don't want Marcus Sherrills doing it. And Holton Hill, he's had some good moments. But then there are other times where there's him, Brandon Zylstra, some other guys in there, where when Sherrills was hurt, it was a major problem. And at least if they still want Sherrills doing the kick returns, this at least gives them another option if he is to get hurt again. And he's never had a punt return, which punt returns are different from kick returns, but he's probably the backup there too. And I do think this could be an insurance policy for Dalvin Cook, because I think the main reason why he played against Detroit last week was because Stephon Diggs was out. And where are we getting our explosive plays if Dalvin Cook and Diggs are not in the game? Like, who's your guy? Who you going in space? Who you giving your one-on-one opportunity in space to make that big play? You don't know, which is the problem. Like, Aldrick Robinson's a deep threat that doesn't always, like, he's had pretty good hands with us, but I remember making a video not so long back where I think his catch percentage was like 38%. Like, historically, or at least given his career, he's not the most consistent guy with the ball, like catching, and he doesn't really have any moves after the catch. He's more of just this deep threat kind of guy. And then Treadwell's not making anyone miss for any big gains anytime soon. We know that. Thielen's more of this guy that will get open, and he can occasionally make a guy miss, but he's not going to consistently make a guy miss. Like, your explosive plays are very limited if those two guys are out. What Ameer Abdullah could bring, potentially, is another big play threat. Maybe not as consistent of one, but another one. And that's much, much needed in this offense. And this is a very low-risk, high-reward type of signing. And what I mean by that is he was a former second-round pick for a reason. Now, I have his measurables here from the Combine back in 2015. And because, like I said, he's not the fastest guy. He only ran a 4.60, but he's very quick and agile, and he contains a lot of lower body explosiveness to go through holes and accelerate. And he ranked third in the 60-yard shuttle with 11.18 seconds, and third to Ajayi, who is second at 11.1. And Melvin Gordon, some of you may know him, with just 11 seconds flat. Now, he was first in the 20-yard shuttle at 3.95 seconds, first in the three-cone at 6.79. He was first in the broad jump at 10'10", first in the vertical jump for running backs at 42.5 inches, and then he was 7th in the bench at 24, and 12th in the 40 at 4.6, and he's only 5'9", 205, so sometimes with the bench press, when it comes to the Combine, you could be looking at guys who have shorter arms kind of get up there more, just because, they don't have to do it as many times to get it up. So that's why sometimes you see these linemen who are like 6'7", 6'8", they'll be like, oh, he has strength concerns, but he really doesn't, because it's like 21 at that arm length is pretty impressive. But he had 24, and he's not necessarily the longest guy in the world, and that might be the reason why, because if he runs north-south, he's not moving anywhere. He's not moving any piles. He's an outside zone, outside kind of guy, get him in space type of dude. That's what he is. and he's an athlete in space. That's mostly what he is. And I think you can do that in Minnesota, especially since Brian O'Neill seems to be a guy who is going to be long term now. And O'Neill can run, and he helps the screen game a lot. And now you talk about this is a guy who can take the load off of Dalvin Cook, which we know the injury history there. Maybe this is kind of following the footsteps of Philly a little bit from last year, as we saw a lot of running backs from last year with Ajayi, Smallwood, Clement. We saw like 3 or 4 backs, and now we got 3 potentially that are very useful in Cook, Murray, and Abdullah. So, but in talent, this is a clear upgrade over Rock Thomas. I think when I went over all those things that he ranked first in, and he ranked third in that 60-yard shuttle, I think people are like, wow, that's good. And the one issue I would really say is the fumbles. The fumbles need to get better. And I think this is hopefully limited by the amount of touches he's going to have. So kind of hoping that fixes some of these, just because if he's not touching it all the time, if we're keeping him like 10 to 15 touches total a game, whether that's, getting him 5 catches here, maybe he gets 4 rushes, he gets a couple kick returns, maybe a punt return or 2, things of that nature, like throughout the game, it maybe not be that big of a deal. And I think he can also find a long-term home in Minnesota potentially as this pass receiving back who can give Dalvin Cook a breather when he needs one. Because he's in his last year of his deal, so is Latavius Murray, and Murray has the 1,000-yard year, he has the Pro Bowl under his belt, and Abdullah kind of has to work off this second-round bust kind of label off of him right now. That has kind of carried over from Detroit probably to Minnesota, I would imagine. And he's 25, so I would imagine he's cheaper and he's younger and he can still fill a role. You still need to find that power back, which I think even though given the size of Murray, you could find a better power back necessarily. Like he's not a pure power back. Like if you found a pure power back, I think this backfield would be pretty much complete as it is. And I think there is a chance if all goes well. If all goes well, this could be another one of those Ben Tate signings, if anyone remembers that. But anyway, want to know what you guys think down below. And until next time, I bid y'all adieu.